education to establish rules surrounding the program.
Well, I thought the rules had already, so the rules haven't been written for this yet.
That I'm not positive of.
I probably misread
There's
this.
different regulations that you're saying that are used already.
Yeah, the kind of ELOs, the
Yeah,
ELOs have been
yeah,
around for a few years.
exactly.
And they kind of, when that started, it kind of
Yes,
simmered for a while. People were trying to figure out what that meant, what that looked like, and now there are a lot of, I know our high school has an ELO coordinator,
Right.
and that's what they do. That along with kids who are in transition, 18 to 21-year-old students who are in special education but still coming to, well, they don't spend much time in public school. They're out in the community doing different
Yeah.
different things, yeah, working or being mentored or shadowing or depending on, you know, the level of their disability, what they're capable of doing. But
Do you have any homeschoolers that are participating in ELOs that you know of, or any kids that are
I don't know. I'm not sure that any of them are requested to.
Okay.
No.
I would assume they would have access to it because it's run by the public schools, so they have access the same way they have access to other extracurricular activities.
Yeah, yeah, some of them, yeah, for the ones that happen after school, if they're available. I know some kids are doing things during the school day and after school.
I read what was posted online, and it looked to me as though the main point of the program was to take different programs that may not already be working with a public school and turn them into places where kids can get credit. I read through the whole thing, and my reaction was, we're homeschoolers, we do that already. But, you know, if you were spending a lot of time and you needed the credits for your public school graduation requirements, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
know.
you know, in other words, homeschoolers could certainly do any of those things, but we do it anyway, we don't really worry about whether somebody's signing it.
Accredited,
Yeah,
right,
and I
okay,
think
right.
one of the issues that had come up when we talked to the commissioner about it was the fact that a business could have a program that spans several districts. And rather than going to, 3, 4, 5 districts to arrange for the ELO credits or whatever, they can do it in one fell swoop now, arrange for
Through the
the
state,
credit
yeah.
program.
Which makes it more
Make
appealing.
it easier for the businesses
Right.
and everybody else so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel between those 3, 4, 5 districts.
Yeah.
So they'd be getting the credit from who? From the state?
State board.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is for homeschoolers, those homeschoolers that want to participate to get credit, this is something that hasn't been, as available up until now. I think there are things going on, that homeschoolers can get credit, but basically it's attending a public school class, I think, if I remember right. So this would expand.
Well, I think this was sounding more like if your child does, backstage scene work at the local theater for 3 hours a week, every single week, and they're in stagecraft, they get credit for it.
Yeah, there's more to it.
Homeschoolers
than
are
that.
doing that too, though, but
Yeah.
we may or may not get
Right.
assigned a credit for it. Or the other direction is what I'm saying. Because we don't need the credit.
Anybody else?
So we've been thinking a lot of the kids at the Seacoast School of Technology, which is in the SAU where I work from, and the kids come from 6, 7 different districts there. A lot of them have internships out in businesses as part of their program too, so there's a lot of that happening. And they're walking right into jobs when they graduate from that, so we have a lot of that going on, so how do we kind of work it together?
Right.
Yeah, that's what this sounds like.
Right,
They're
right.
trying to keep everything or include everything that's already happening in this package.
George?
Yeah,
The State Board of Ed has their hearing on Learning Everywhere on February 14th at 9 a.m.
I'm gonna have to post that one.
is it being held?
Here.
Here, as part of their monthly board
Oh,
meeting.
I see, okay.
Yeah, it's scheduled as part of the meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting concept.
Sounds like a lot for the Department of Education. Why they wouldn't take all that on? That could be a lot of people.
It's almost like, taking what's already here and maybe augmenting it a bit and keeping it all in one, keeping it all in one piece, I guess, I don't know how to say it. Then we have the Statehouse Bicentennial Contest. It's a multimedia contest this year. There's going to be material being sent out on that. They would like some homeschool participation. And
Last year, their program was set up such that, I tried and went back and forth with them over and over. There was almost like no way a homeschooler could participate because you couldn't fill in their forms and make their classroom type requirements. And I asked them to, could they write up something or anything that I could give to homeschoolers, and there was nothing. So I hope they're,
yeah, it looks, I took a look at it.
Don't communicate with us.
Yeah. That's weird because
It was difficult.
I wonder if this, yeah.
The form that they have this year says, school name and teacher or sponsor name, but it's
That's okay.
much more simplified form.
Yeah, did you see the last year stuff?
No, but I have heard about it extensively. So, and you're not the only person who had.
Because it was
that
just
sort
really
of-
confusing. We didn't know. We
And I
tried to
think
put the links out, but we just.
it wasn't, user-friendly in any way, shape, or form, but this one, they even have, ages, and then equivalent to high school. So I think they got the message loud and clear because they did not have a lot of homeschool participation, and they wanted to make sure that that changed this year. So the forms look pretty easy in comparison.
For last year. Kitty, I put something on there called request for assistance, but I don't remember
Request for
what the heck that was about.
Wondering if anybody had gotten any calls from anybody maybe looking for help with something?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to, yes, that's what it was, Helen. The only calls I got in the intervening period were, typical things like, gee, I want to homeschool, how do I get started?
Right.
So there were no curveballs.
The coalition is still dealing with two of those people saying, I know about it, no, not a push out. I know a family and I'm pretty sure we're not really homeschooling and the children are not getting anything. And we have a relatively new board, so we're kind of training them. It's like, well, you have to reply to them. We have a lot of things in the files that explain, what's required by the law, or explain that education can look different, maybe the children are reading books or, blah, 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 blah. But there was that one that Paula Marie got out of Milford, and she didn't, kind of after I was here, I didn't have time to do that. She did want me to actually read it to the So we got one from the Concord area a while ago that said, I'm sure that this family is not homeschooling, and I've been told that if I contact the school or the Department of Education or DCYF, they won't do anything. And people didn't quite know what to say about that, and,
Pretty much true.
You said your other one is from Milford?
the other one's.
She has been on the phone with me a couple of times.
Yes, that's
And
right.
I
She said she
actually
talked to me.
finally asked her to speak with the commissioner, because she's
Okay,
being
good.
very adamant, even though the law was explained, they've met the intent. She just is very concerned.
See, I talked to somebody like that once, and what I what I explained to them was, okay, the law says this and that, but that's not sufficient for those people, you know? So I said, you know, like you brought up, Steph, it can look very different from what you're expecting. And just because you see the kids outside, this doesn't mean nothing's going on in education. There's a lot of different ways that people, that families have of doing home education.
Because there is also a chance that the family is not compliant,
Right.
which is something the commissioner and I talked about quite a bit, which, since it's come up here, I'll mention that. But what Paul and Marie got from the Milford area is, it has come to my attention, as well as others, a family of 4 children in Milford are not given their fundamental right of education. Their parents took them out of the Milford school system over a year ago to homeschool them, but these children are not receiving any type of education. No one from the state, local level, or teacher has had any contact with this family since they have been home. Of course, technically, they wouldn't necessarily have it. This country legally guarantees states have the obligation to protect, respect, and fulfill the right to educate our children. States can be held accountable for violations or deprivations of the right of education. You are all familiar with the clause at the end of 193A that says the school district and the state is not responsible for your child's education. And I have been in contact with several agencies in New Hampshire, as well as the Department of Education, the superintendent of schools, and even one of your representatives, blah, 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 blah. But I did say to Paula, because she was trying to just let it go, we can't just not reply. It seems like homeschoolers may just be covering up for each other.
I've responded several times.
Yeah, the commissioner insisted upon interviewing me before I could be on the HEAC. He says he wants to talk to everybody now before they join the board. And I don't know all of you, but I've been homeschooling for 26 years. I've been on the New Hampshire Homeschooling Coalition since 1997. I've been a minister since the 2000s, and seeing all the little things go back and forth over my little desktop. So I talked to him for a long, long time, longer than he had planned. And this question came up. I said, what about with the recent change that now we don't submit anything? We have these people who call up and say these people are not homeschooling. And this is his take on the truancy issue. He says he sees it as a truancy issue. We should go ahead and refer these issues to him. This is the only way it finally really made sense to me. He said, you know, if you register your child at the local public school, you have them registered at the school. Then if you do not send them, your kids are truant. So if you send a letter that says we are homeschooling, you've signed up to home educate. Then if you don't do anything, I mean, and as we just said, home education can take root, but if you do nothing, you don't get your evaluations done, you don't make your high school daughter sit there reading, okay, so she's not doing it. Then you are truant because you've signed up for a program, but perhaps you're not actually doing it. The law does say you have to teach English, United States history, living, New Hampshire Constitution, things like that. So I said, well, what do we do when we get these things? We don't want to send them to DCYF, because we know DCYF has said they won't prosecute educational neglect cases. And I said, can we send them to the commissioner? And he said, yeah, send them to me. I said, really? So that's what he said at this point.
What's he going to do then?
I'm not sure, but that's his take on it. So I mean, if those of us, particularly in the homeschooling community, get these things coming across that say, I know of a family, I think we should direct the person to contact the Commissioner of Education.
Okay. And that is the last step I took with her. I said, because she actually indicated that, I know there's a child advocate that had, was it last year? And she mentioned that group, she also mentioned talking to a rep, and was, just really upset. And so I told her that I would like her to speak with the commissioner, and gave her Angela's number, direct number, and called Angela and said, this woman will be calling. Because she's called a couple of times. She goes back between her calling or a niece that, she's out of state, but the initial person I spoke with is out of state. She has a niece that's a social worker here, teacher. And so we've gone around a few times with her.
One thing that kind of concerns me though is if we have a different commissioner in the future, that commissioner isn't necessarily the person to whom you want to fill these questions. We don't really have anything in place anymore because that part was taken out of the law when we removed the part that said you don't have to submit the evaluation. So
Do we ever do anything about that? Like, would a HEAC member go do at-home visit, or is that not even?
No, that's not-
No, it does not.
But we do, as you'll see in the rules, we do still have the thing that says a grievance committee, that says any party to a home education program can call a grievance committee, which has got some HEAC members on it, and it's part of the Department of Education.
But that would be,
Because you have to be a party to a home
Yes.
education program, which would
Right.
be the PA or the homeschooling family. But if a
Mhm.
participating agency said, we keep hearing from the neighbors that you're not homeschooling, and we would like to see your evaluation or something, and it turns into a big hoopla, I suppose you could have a grievance committee, because that's still in the rules.
Last year, there was a bill in Concord about educational neglect as a broad issue, but as it applies to homeschooling. And DCYF did say that they investigate homeschooling cases and they treat them the same as they do public school.
And I've heard differently right from DCYF. Having her say to me, you've tied our hands recently. Because she was calling, asking for a copy of the law to try to understand what their role is in the, and then this person, again, Milford case, indicated they were told to call DCYF. DCYF said, no, call the police. I don't know what the police. Police said, no, that's not our jurisdiction. I don't know whether she meant police, whether she meant truant officers, what I'm thinking that they meant. So it was just this circle of not getting any answers.
What I thought I had on file, which I think is from the app meeting from a few years ago, is that if it's only educational neglect,
Right.
DCYF will not go in after it. But if the person is saying, I don't think they're teaching their kids, and I don't think they're feeding them enough food, and I don't think, well, they're
Yes.
then they'll go in, but,
And
Yeah, in the hearings,
somewhere.
they clearly stated that they do investigate homeschool educational neglect. They consider it their purview. And they
When-
did not, that was last spring.
when it's only